You walked away from what everyone else stayed for. That's wild energy. Everyone around you had genuine reasons to stay. Good reasons, reasonable reasons, the kind of reasons that hold most people in place for years, sometimes for a lifetime. Comfort, familiarity, the fear of starting over somewhere unknown, the sunk cost of everything already invested. Every one of those reasons applied to you too. You had just as much invested, just as much comfort available if you'd chosen to keep accepting it, just as much fear waiting on the other side of leaving. And you left anyway, while everyone else stayed, weighing the exact same reasons and arriving at the exact opposite conclusion. You looked at the whole situation and decided that staying wasn't actually the safer choice, no matter how much it looked that way from the outside. Let's be honest about what staying usually represents, because it's rarely framed as fear, even when that's exactly what it is. Staying gets dressed up in other language: loyalty, patience, commitment, practicality. Those words aren't always wrong, and sometimes staying really is the wiser choice. But often, underneath the respectable language, staying is simply the path that requires the least immediate courage, the option that avoids the discomfort of disruption, even when the disruption is exactly what the situation actually calls for. Everyone around you chose the version that avoided that discomfort. You chose the version that walked directly into it. Think about what it actually took to see clearly enough to walk away from something everyone else had normalized. When you're surrounded by people who've all made the same choice, staying starts to feel less like a decision and more like the obvious, default reality, the only sensible option available. Seeing past that requires a specific kind of independent thinking, a willingness to trust your own read on a situation even when literally everyone around you is operating from a different conclusion. That's not a small thing. Groupthink is genuinely powerful, and it takes real hard-won clarity to notice when a shared consensus has quietly become a trap rather than a reasonable, well-considered agreement. There's something worth saying about what it costs to be the only one who leaves. When everyone around you stays, your leaving doesn't just change your own trajectory. It becomes, whether you intend it or not, a kind of quiet commentary on their choice to remain. People don't always love being reminded by someone else's departure that staying was a choice rather than an inevitability. Some of them will feel that discomfort and turn it into something directed at you, questioning your decision, second-guessing your judgment, subtly implying you gave up too easily or didn't try hard enough. That reaction usually says more about their own unresolved feelings about staying than it says anything meaningful about the actual merits of your decision. Consider what it actually means to walk away from something with real weight attached to it, something that wasn't easy to leave precisely because it had real value mixed in with whatever wasn't working. Nobody praises leaving something worthless. The wild energy people are reacting to comes specifically from the fact that what you walked away from wasn't nothing. It had history, investment, maybe even genuine good moments woven throughout it. Walking away from something purely bad requires very little courage. Walking away from something complicated, something with real value tangled up alongside whatever made it unsustainable, requires an entirely different level of clarity and resolve. There's a particular kind of grief that comes with leaving something that had real value, even when leaving was clearly the right decision. You probably grieved parts of what you left behind, even while being certain the departure itself was necessary. Those two things aren't contradictory. You can mourn something and still know, without any doubt, that staying would have cost you more than leaving did. people who've never had to make that kind of decision sometimes assume clarity about leaving means an absence of any complicated feelings about it. That's rarely how it actually works. The clarity and the grief usually exist together, side by side, the whole way through. Think about the specific moment you finally understood that staying wasn't actually protecting you the way it seemed to be, because that realization usually doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly, through repeated evidence, through moments that accumulate until the pattern becomes undeniable. Somewhere along the way, you crossed a threshold where the risk of leaving finally became noticeably smaller than the risk of continuing to stay exactly where you were. That threshold is different for everyone, and there's no universal formula for exactly when it should be crossed. You found yours, in your own time, through your own accumulated evidence, and once you found it, you acted on it, even though everyone around you was still operating as though that threshold hadn't been reached yet. There's something worth naming about the specific isolation that comes from making a decision nobody around you is making at the same time. If everyone leaves together, there's a kind of collective validation built into the departure, a shared understanding that this was the right call. You didn't have that. You left alone, into whatever came next, while everyone who stayed behind continued operating inside a reality you'd already decided wasn't sustainable for you. That kind of solitary decision-making requires trusting your own judgment enough to act on it decisively, even without anyone else around you confirming that you're reading the situation correctly. Consider what it actually took to resist the specific pressure that comes from watching everyone else normalize staying. When something becomes the accepted, unquestioned reality for a whole group of people, questioning it starts to feel almost socially unacceptable, like you're the one being difficult, the one refusing to just accept things the way everyone else has accepted them. You had to be willing to be the difficult one, the one who wouldn't just go along with a consensus that didn't actually serve you, even knowing that choice would set you apart from everyone still operating inside the accepted version of reality. There's a reason people describe this kind of decision as wild energy, rather than simply calling it brave or smart, because wild implies something slightly outside the expected range of normal behavior, something that breaks the pattern people were prepared to see. Staying is the pattern. It's what most people do, most of the time, in most situations that resemble whatever you were in. Your leaving broke that pattern in a way that reads as almost surprising, even shocking to people who were fully expecting you to follow the same script everyone else was following. Think about what you actually gave up in order to walk away, because leaving something real always involves loss, even when it's the right decision. Maybe you gave up certain relationships that couldn't survive your departure. Maybe you gave up a version of stability, however imperfect, that at least felt predictable, in exchange for uncertainty that offered no such guarantee. Those losses were real. Acknowledging them doesn't undermine the decision. It just tells the more complete, more honest version of what walking away actually required, rather than pretending it was a clean, costless escape from something purely bad. There's something worth saying about what it means that you were willing to accept those losses in exchange for something you couldn't fully guarantee in advance. Staying offered a known quantity, however flawed. Leaving offered uncertainty, the possibility of something better but no promise of it. Choosing uncertainty over a known, tolerable quantity requires a specific kind of faith in your own ability to build something new, faith that doesn't come with any guarantees attached, faith you had to generate entirely on your own before you had any evidence it would actually pay off. Consider what it says about your relationship with comfort, that you were willing to sacrifice it for something less certain, but more aligned with what you actually needed. A lot of people confuse comfort with well-being, treating them as interchangeable when they're often quite different things. Something can be comfortable in the sense of being familiar and predictable, while still being fundamentally unsustainable in the ways that matter most. You were able to distinguish between those two things, recognizing that the comfort of staying wasn't actually serving your well-being, even though it felt in the moment like the safer choice by almost every conventional measure. There's a particular kind of respect that this decision earns from people who've faced a similar crossroads themselves, even if they ultimately made a different choice. They recognize what it took, even if their own circumstances led them to a different conclusion. That recognition matters more, in some ways, than the reaction from people who've never had to face that kind of decision at all, because it comes from people who understand exactly how heavy the weighing process actually was, not just the outcome you eventually arrived at. Think about what it means now, looking back, that you were the one who left while everyone else stayed. It doesn't necessarily mean your choice was objectively correct for every single person in that same situation. Different people have different circumstances, different obligations, different reasons that might make staying the genuinely right call for them. What it does mean is that you trusted your own read of your own specific circumstances enough to act on it, even against the visible current of everyone else's choices. That trust in your own judgment, exercised under real pressure, is the actual thing people are reacting to when they call it wild energy. There's something worth saying about what comes after a decision like this, because walking away isn't the end of the story, just the beginning of whatever comes next. You didn't leave in order to arrive at some perfect, guaranteed outcome. You left because staying had stopped being sustainable, and whatever came afterward was always going to require its own separate effort, its own separate uncertainty, its own separate process of building something new out of the space you created by leaving. That ongoing work doesn't get talked about as much as the dramatic moment of departure itself, but it's arguably just as significant, maybe more so. Consider, finally, what this decision proves about your capacity to trust yourself in future crossroads, whenever they show up next. You now carry direct evidence that you're capable of walking away from something everyone else accepted, when your own judgment told you it was necessary. That evidence doesn't disappear. It becomes part of how you approach every future decision that requires going against a comfortable, well-established consensus. You've already proven you can do it once, under real pressure, with real stakes attached. That proof matters more than any temporary reaction from people who are still processing what your departure meant for the choices they made instead. There's something worth naming about the specific version of doubt that shows up right before a decision like this, because it rarely arrives quietly. It arrives loud, insistent, listing every reason staying makes more sense, every risk attached to leaving, every way things could go wrong once you're standing outside the familiar structure everyone else is still operating inside. You had to make the decision anyway, with that doubt fully present, not after it had been resolved or silenced. Waiting for the doubt to disappear before acting would have meant waiting indefinitely, because doubt like that rarely disappears entirely. You learn to act alongside it instead of waiting for its permission. That's a different skill than confidence in the way people usually imagine it. It's not the absence of fear or doubt. It's the willingness to move forward with both fully present, refusing to let their volume dictate whether the decision gets made. Most people wait for certainty before acting, and certainty like that, in situations this complicated, almost never actually arrives. You acted without it, which is a much harder and less comfortable version of courage than the one usually depicted. Think about what it means that you had to build an entirely new structure for your life after leaving, without the benefit of the old one to fall back on if the new one didn't immediately work. Staying offers a strange kind of safety net, however flawed, simply because it's already built, already familiar, already functioning in some baseline way even if it's not functioning well. Leaving removes that net entirely. You had to build something new from scratch, in real time, without the guarantee that whatever you built would actually hold. That construction process is rarely instant. It probably took time, trial, error, and a willingness to tolerate instability for longer than felt comfortable before anything solid started to form. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes with rebuilding an entire structure while everyone around you continues operating inside the old one. You didn't get to compare notes with people going through the exact same transition, because most of the people you knew weren't making that same transition alongside you. That meant navigating a lot of the specific challenges of rebuilding without a peer group who understood exactly what you were dealing with in real time. You had to figure out a lot of it independently, learning through direct experience rather than through the kind of shared wisdom that usually comes from other people who've walked the same specific path recently. There's a reason walking away from something everyone else accepted tends to unsettle people more than almost any other kind of change, because it exposes the fact that the accepted reality was always a choice, never an inevitability, even when it had started to feel that way through sheer repetition and consensus. You didn't set out to expose that for anyone else. You just needed the truth of it for your own decision. But the byproduct of your leaving is that it makes the choice visible to everyone who's still deciding whether they want that visibility or not, and that's often exactly what makes people uncomfortable in ways they can't fully articulate. So let the wild energy comment sit there however it lands. You know what actually happened underneath that description. The years of doubt, the isolation of deciding alone, the grief mixed in with the clarity, and the long, unglamorous work of building something new once the leaving itself was finished. That's the real story, and it's yours, regardless of how quickly or slowly anyone else eventually catches up to understanding it. There's one more thing worth sitting with, because it's easy to overlook once the dust from a decision like this settles. Walking away doesn't mean you're immune to wondering occasionally what would have happened if you'd stayed instead. That wondering doesn't undo the decision or prove it was wrong. It's simply what happens when you close one door permanently and choose never to fully know what was behind it. You're allowed to carry that curiosity without letting it destabilize what you already know to be true, that staying had stopped serving you long before you actually left. You made the harder choice, in a moment where the easier one was fully available and fully accepted by everyone around you, and nobody would have blamed you for taking it. That's the whole of it. Not a mystery, not an accident, not some special immunity to fear that other people simply don't have. Just a decision, made clearly, under real pressure, and carried through even when nobody else was making the same one at the same time.